uh, unite. We all should try to get together to force Pakistan and to force those people behind this whole genocide and this Holocaust which is ongoing, to force them to stop it. And we should plan the activities to communicate whatever is happening to us to the world, so that they can stand with us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Saab. It was really wonderful listening to your views on this subject, and you have clarified so many things. And in fact, this will enlighten all of us, and this will lead to a very positive energy in the whole subcontinent. Now, may I request Miss Miss Aarti Agarwal to share her views about this. And before she starts, I must share it with you that she's an author, she's a researcher working on genocide, and she's also an expert on cow economics. So, Miss Aarti Agarwal, please, you may share your views with the please.
Thank you, Dr. Parthasarathi. So, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think Dr. Sajjad Raja has already given a very good introduction to Holocaust and the impact it has and the genocide. What I will speak on will be the continuing patterns of genocide from history till now. So what I want to say is that although the Jewish and the main Holocaust gets a lot of attention, and for good reason, I'm not denying that, but there have been many genocides in the world which have gone mostly unrecognized. And by not recognizing these genocides, we are actually committing a great injustice to the victims of these genocides. And there are multiple such genocides. Now, if I start talking about all of them, it will take a very long time. But since my focus, my work is mainly in the area of documenting the hate crimes against Hindus and the genocides of Hindus in the Indian subcontinent, especially in the Indian subcontinent, although we do document other countries as well. So I will share a few slides, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, although there is a lot of content in the slides. So let me just share my screen. Okay, is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to say is the main purpose of this presentation, or whatever you want to call it, is that the patterns of genocide have been more or less the same decade after decade. And it is a very grave error on the part of all human rights organizations as well as the governments involved that we have not been able to correct these patterns. And this is something which I think is a very important point we need to recognize today, because the Holocaust has taught us absolutely nothing if we can't fix these patterns of genocide which are repeating over and over again. So let's start with the history. So there are like 3 or 4 patterns which I will point out, and I will just cite some of the historic episodes as well as the recent ones. So a lot of these persecuted people, the people who died. Now, in this aspect, I'll actually contrast it with the Holocaust. If you actually see, in the Jewish Holocaust, the Jews have done a phenomenal job of documenting details of each and every single victim. If you see, there is a Twitter handle and a Facebook page also for the Auschwitz Memorial. They have details of each and every single day they post on this day, this person died in this way, in this particular camp. They have such like, intense documentation. But on our side, what we have is nothing. We don't even have proper numbers. Forget about names, forget about faces, forget about the pictures. So we don't have any details. Now, this is not just something which is like, oh, we did not document it, or oh, this is missing. It's not that. It is erasure. It's complete erasure of the identity of the victims, which leads to further denial of the genocide and the crimes. So this erasure of identity is not a small matter. That is what I'm trying to say here. Now, this is just one example. The Delhi riots, which happened in 2020 in December, it is one of the most horrifying aspects of recent crime wave in India. And we all know that they were funded by all international funding, and all of this was not just an Indian phenomena. We know that, but the problem is we don't have a complete list of victims. I have gone through every person's documentation, whoever has worked on this, and I still don't have it because it doesn't exist. Nobody has bothered to document it. It's not possible that the list doesn't exist, but the problem is it is suppressed, and we don't have even the names of the people who committed atrocities in this particular incident. Now, I don't want to go too much into the history because it'll take a very long time. Let's go to Portuguese Inquisition. This is an important part. So in Portuguese Inquisition, a few of the key aspects of the Portuguese Inquisition was that religious liberties were suspended. Hindus were not allowed to worship in the open. They were not allowed to worship in daylight, as in publicly. Hindu religious books were burned. Hindu rituals were banned. So if you wanted to live as a Hindu, you had to migrate out of that region just to be able to live as a Hindu. Otherwise, you would be forcibly converted. And of course, you would be taken as a slave. So just the existing documents say that at least 16,000 Hindus were brought to trial. And this is just a few papers which survived. The rest of the papers were all burned in that Inquisition, by the way, which still is not recognized by UN or by UNHRC or by even Indian government or any official authority as a genocide of Hindus. Now the Pope has apologized for some other, other biblical, other Christian conversions and inquisitions in other countries, but he has still, even the Pope has not acknowledged the persecution of Hindus by the Portuguese to date. And this is a very serious lapse, because if you see the recent example of this minor girl in Tamil Nadu who committed suicide because of forcible conversion. Now, why are we not able to stop these kind of phenomena? Because we have not even recognized that phenomena. We have not even recognized that Hindus can be forcibly converted to the extent that they don't want to live. So taking away somebody's will to live is also a kind of a genocide. So I'm just trying to highlight some of the key aspects of how non-recognition of historic genocides has led to the continuation of the same patterns of genocide. Now, this is again a recent example. This is, I've just put some pictures are from India, some are from Bangladesh. This Bangladesh picture is from October 2021. And this picture of the sadhu is, of course, from April 2020. We are seeing the same kind of atrocities. The temples are being destroyed. The treasury of temples is being usurped by governments in India. I'm talking about India right now. Hindu priests and sannyasis are being attacked in broad daylight, not that they were being hidden. Hindu girls, minor girls are being forcibly married and converted and abducted. And there is a recent wave, surge in crimes of forcible conversion of Hindu women in India, also, not just in Pakistan and Bangladesh, but in India also. So if you see, the ban on key practices of Hindu festivals is happening every year, and it is getting worse every year. We cannot celebrate Diwali, we cannot celebrate Holi, we cannot celebrate any festival without there being some restrictions on it. So apparently COVID happens only when it is Holi or Diwali. Other than that, India doesn't have COVID. So you can have Republic Day celebration, you can have rallies, you can have political rallies, but there is no COVID. Only for Holi and Diwali you have COVID restrictions. And this was not just a case of COVID. Even before the COVID period, this was the same. So let me just go to the figures now. This is the number of attacks on Hindu temples in the year 2020. This is the figure 217, at least 217. 217 is reported, whatever has been reported in the news, not just some random number. We have a link news source for each of these 217. Now I'll go to some of the other examples. In 2016, Hindu women from India were sold as slaves, like products, in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, for 2,000 to 4,000 pounds only. And this is a reported news. This has been reported internationally. This is not something which only I am talking about. And they were basically they were asked to travel to these countries in the lure of better pay, better work opportunities, but they were physically abused, mistreated, and they were not even paid for any work. And this is an estimated number is 20,000 women who were being sold as slaves. And this is something which was very shocking to me. But it seems that we have not moved beyond this. We have not moved to a civilized world as it should have been. And this pattern of taking women as slaves or sex slaves is again continuing from our historic era. We talk about the great Calcutta killings of 1946. You can see the numbers: 4,000, at least 4,000 were murdered. 1 lakh were forced to flee. 35,000 were forcibly converted. The similar pattern in Noakhali genocide in 1946. Now, what is happening in Bangladesh now? So, ironically, in last October 2021, it was the 50th anniversary. No, sorry, 75th anniversary of the Noakhali genocide of 1946, and just 10th October 2021 was the 75th anniversary of the Noakhali genocide, Noakhali massacre. But in 2021, just a few days after that, 13th October, again Hindus were being targeted and their homes were vandalized and burnt. And not just a few homes. I'm not talking about a handful of homes here. This is 1,650 homes have been documented as vandalized, burnt, Hindus forced to flee, attacked. More than 343 Hindu temples were desecrated and vandalized. They were not just burned, they were vandalized. And all of this is documented. We have images, we have videos, we have everything. More than 26 Hindu women and girls were raped brutally, and women had absolutely no role to play in this. Even if you considered this as some sort of a conflict or a misunderstanding, they had absolutely no role to play in this. So you can see the pictures as well. This is the same pattern which is continuing from Noakhali genocide of 1946. The same type of attacks were dealt to Hindus. Now, if you go further back to the Mopla genocide, this is, sorry, this should be 21, not 20. You can see that similar pattern. Thousands of Hindus murdered, thousands forced to flee, thousands forcibly converted, and hundreds of Hindu temples destroyed and vandalized. Somebody speaking, I think, okay, not to me. So we talk about Kohat riots of 1924. Again, similar pattern. Hundreds of Hindus and Sikhs were murdered brutally. And there is a mass exodus of Hindus from the region, numbering around 3,200. This is the partition of India. Now look carefully at this picture. This is the partition of India from 1947. 7 million is the estimated figure as per scholars. Hindus and Sikhs were murdered or displaced or forcibly converted, and millions more were forced to flee. We don't have the number of how many exactly fled. And I'm reporting this as this figure because this is what I've got. I don't have an exact figure of how many were murdered because nobody bothered to document it. Now look at this picture and look at the immediately next picture. This is the picture from 1971 Bangladesh genocide. The picture looks almost exactly the same kind of way people are walking with just the bare essentials on the top of their heads, almost barefoot. Yeah, they are barefoot actually. And with nothing more than just the bare survival things on their backs. And they're just walking. When people leave countries like this, when they leave their homes, their families, behind like this, that it's an act of desperation. It is not like a morning walk. These people are walking because that is the only way they have of saving their lives. Again, 2.4 million Hindus were murdered or converted. More than 2 lakh women were raped, and estimated 8 million displaced into India. So the pattern which we are seeing here is that there is a mass violence, sudden mass violence against thousands or millions of Hindus. Then they are forcibly converted, and because of that, there is a mass exodus of Hindus. Now, all these three happen at the same time, and when we are talking about mass violence, these type of things just cannot. It's not like just one morning everybody coincidentally just wakes up and starts committing mass violence. You need resources for that. You need funds for that. You need ammunition for that. You need firearms for that. You need some sort of a strategy for that. Because in many of these genocides, the exits were blocked. So if you talk about Noakhali genocide, the exits were blocked. People could not escape through the river or through the roads because the roads were dug up or the communication lines were ruined. So, these require certain level of planning, a higher level planning to commit this kind of a mass violence, this kind of a genocide. So what I'm trying to say here is that all of these crimes through history till now and recent history, they're following the same pattern, and yet we have not been able to correct that same pattern. So if we fail to correct the pattern, if we fail to recognize it as a genocide, we will fail to correct the pattern. And if we fail to correct that pattern of the genocide, then it will go on repeating, as we are seeing now. Now let's come to more recent history, the Kashmiri Exodus in 1990, where more than 6 lakh Hindus were forced to flee from the Kashmir Valley overnight, and hundreds were murdered. Hundreds, I'm saying hundreds because that is what is reported, but actual number is expected to be in thousands. But because again, it is not properly documented, I don't have the final number. But the sad part is this was the 7th exodus of Kashmiri Hindus. This was not the first exodus. Now let's come to more recent past. This is still 90s, 2016, Kerala. This is a region in UP. More than 250 Hindu families left the town because of the fear of the extremists in that area. And this is again the same kind of a pattern we are talking about, which we have already seen in the past. The scale is smaller, but the pattern is the same. And this was a story which ran in a news portal where I think the journalist went and actually saw the houses there. But is that it? Is it just India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh? No, we see the same type of thing in Myanmar as well, where at least 120 Myanmar Hindus were murdered. And if you read the article, we have documented this in detail. It was an ISIS-like execution of these people. They were forced to dig their own graves, and then they were murdered, and they were buried in those graves. And more than 30,000